Have you seen Walt Disney's The Lion King? One of my favorite scenes is when the witch Rafiki presents the newborn cub Simba to the gods, while Simba's parents beam with pride. That scene is what inspired the baby blessing I want to share with you today. Stay tuned. You're listening to Ritual Recipes, a podcast full of practical magic to nourish your inner life. If this is your first time in my cosmic kitchen, make yourself comfortable. If this is not your first visit, welcome back. This is episode 3. It's about welcoming a new twig on a family tree. It's about baby blessings. I'm your host, Zita Christian. I've been creating and performing public and private rituals for more than 20 years. If you identify as spiritual, not religious, ritual will feed your spirit. As a life cycle celebrant, I create rituals to help individuals, couples, and families navigate rites of passage. Those passages might be weddings, new home blessings, baby blessings, as well as funerals, memorial services, and other milestones along the way. Most of the people who work with me are not members of a church. That no longer presents an obstacle for couples getting married. There are several legal alternatives for someone to perform the ceremony. A couple might choose a justice of the peace, a general officiant, or a specific type of officiant called a life cycle celebrant. That's what I am. Not being a member of a church or other organized spiritual community can present a challenge when the couple has a baby. While having a party to celebrate the new member of the family is a fine idea, what I think the new parents and grandparents want, whether they name it as such or not, is a ritual. Ritual, a visible act performed with invisible intent. Oh, but what kind of ritual? Who will perform it? What will I need? Where should we have it? How much will it cost? These are key questions, not unlike the questions the new parents probably asked when planning their wedding. The unspoken question might be, will it make any difference? Of course, the answer to that question is subjective, but I can tell you that I have watched new parents as they gaze at their baby. Sometimes the look in their eyes is contemplative, sometimes fiercely protective, and always filled with love. It's like they're having a daydream about the future and their DNA. The parents want to develop the skills they don't yet have and perfect the best of who they already are to ensure their child's future health and happiness. Ritual creates a container for those feelings. The need for ritual is ancient. Do you remember the baby blessing scene from another Walt Disney movie, Sleeping Beauty? Family, friends, and fairy godmothers all gathered to present gifts to baby Aurora. In both Sleeping Beauty and The Lion King, we see and feel the importance of the baby's birth, not only to the parents, but also to the community. Centuries ago, it was easy to see how the survival of a community depended on couples getting married. Their commitment to each other lent stability to the entire village, where every path led to the home of a friend. Marriage ensured the community that in time, meaning when the couple had children, there would be more tailors, more threshers, more blacksmiths, beekeepers, bakers, shoemakers, and sailors, more parts to make the whole. Sure, times have changed. Our communities need different skills. But what has not changed is the need for love expressed in the kind of commitment that grows a family. When each new member of the family arrives, the parents, the grandparents, the whole community needs to celebrate. Now let me get specific. I want to share a story with you. It's a true story, and I'm telling it with permission. It's a warm August afternoon in a small rural town on the Connecticut shore. A gentle breeze wafts from the lake across the road. It's 2016. Now picture a young couple standing on the grass in front of a sturdy house built decades ago. With a little flower garden, a stone wall, and a huge tree, The home feels warm and welcoming. The new mom is holding a baby a few months old. The new dad is helping giggling nieces and nephews climb into the chairs set beneath the tree. Family and friends are taking their seats too. 3 years earlier, Carla Garb and Anthony Girardi got married at the Preston Vineyard in Preston, Connecticut. I was their officiant. In creating their ceremony, I looked for a way to show the value each placed on family, because that is where we first learn about love. Here are a few paragraphs from The Baby Blessing. The first paragraph came from the love story I wrote for the wedding. I wanted the guests at the baby blessing, many of whom were also at the wedding, to remember where it all began. Here's what I said. Oh, there was a moment when they considered eloping to an exotic island, but Carla wanted her dad to walk her down the aisle. He's the rock in my life, she told me, the best father anyone could ever ask for. Anthony knew how much his parents would want to see him get married, too. He thought about his 93 years young grandmother and told me, I want her to be there to share this moment with me. Yes, family is important to both Anthony and Carla. There are traditions to be carried on, making jarred foods, making wine, and gathering the family for dinners on Sunday. In time, they'll add their own traditions to the legacy. Now I'm talking to them in the baby blessing. 3 years ago, your love for Carla and Anthony called you to a vineyard. Every place carries its own kind of energy. A vineyard in harvest season validates hard work, honors fertility, and invites celebration. The home that a couple makes for their child has its own kind of energy, too. A home built with love is the best place to celebrate the birth of a child. Today, we've gathered with Carla and Anthony to celebrate the birth of their son, Anthony Jr. Now, if you're creating a baby blessing, look for a way to connect the past with the present. Here's a little more of what I said in the baby blessing. Thanks to Ancestry.com, the study of genealogy has sparked an interest in family trees, the likes of which the world has never seen. We hear stories about all those who came before us and take delight in thinking that we too might share a certain trait or talent. When we have an old photograph, we look in the mirror and smile to see the same shape of the face, the same set of the eyes. When we have access to official records, we see courage in the log of shipboard passage, gratitude in the date of citizenship, love in the recording of a marriage, joy in the number of offspring, honor in the preservation of a family name. Through these details, sometimes no more than a line in a census report, we realize just how much history is held in a family tree and just how deep the roots can grow. We realize that if not for our ancestors, we would not be here today. As baby Anthony graces the branch of his family tree, we remember those who are no longer with us. At this point in the ceremony, I mentioned by name the grandparents who had died. Carla and Anthony gave me little stories about each one. We remember Anthony's grandparents, Giuseppe and Julia Girardi. Though Anthony was too young to have known them, he grew up inspired by the stories of how they came to this country with nothing, worked hard, raised 4 children. And stories about Giuseppe's tough love and about Julia's late nights cooking and sewing so her family would be taken care of. We remember Anthony's grandfather, Vincenzo Napolitano, a man who delighted in making others laugh, a man who embodied peace and security. Anthony remembers being a very little boy, slipping out of his crib at night, sneaking down the stairs to his grandfather's room, and falling asleep by his side. Because Vincenzo adored Carla, Anthony is certain his grandfather was smiling on them on their wedding day, and smiling even more today. We remember Carla's grandfather, Robert Garb, who left us just last year. He was stubborn, intelligent, and loved to tell jokes. When he was very sick in the hospital, he was still telling jokes to all the nurses and doctors who would enter his room. He even carried around a little notebook with his jokes written down. He made the best potato pancakes and pigs in a blanket, and he had a huge sweet tooth. He was also an animal lover, and Carla remembers him routinely leaving family get-togethers so he could go home and feed his cats. Now, for those guests who were not members of the family, knowing details about the generations who came before the new parents added texture to the celebration and deepened the meaning of family. For baby blessings, I created a ritual called the nest. Here are the items I assembled in advance and placed on a small table. For now, you'll need to use your imagination. You can see photos of the items in the show notes for this episode. This is number 3. So first, a bird's nest made of grapevine, about 8 inches in diameter. I cut a circle of brown paper about 2 inches in diameter, and I affixed it to the bottom of the nest with a little clear glue. On top of the paper, I placed just enough moss, dried moss, to cover the paper. And of course, the paper is to make sure the moss doesn't slip through the nest. Then I also had a container of assorted dry moss. I had several shades of green and brown, bits of some other colors. How much moss you'll need really depends on how many grandparents or other significant elders will soften the nest during the ritual. And finally, a pair of stone owls to represent the parents and a little stone owlet to represent the baby. My friend Carol Chaput is a fine artist by profession. She painted the 3 stones to resemble the little family. I think of the nest ritual in 4 parts. The first part is called warming the owlet. I held up the empty nest and the little owlet stone so that all the guests could see it, and this is what I said. A home is the haven of the heart. This nest symbolizes the home that Carla and Anthony have built. Later in the ceremony, they'll each place a representation of an owl, symbol of wisdom, in this nest. They'll also nestle this owlet. Before the baby is tucked into the nest, I'm going to pass it among you. I invite each of you to hold it for a moment and imbue it with your love. At that point, I walked over to the grandmother sitting in the front row on the right aisle. The other grandmother sat in the front row on the left aisle. I spoke with both of them prior to the ceremony so they would know what to expect. And the plan was for me to give the owlet to one grandmother. She would hold it a moment and then send it on its way among the guests on her side of the aisle. The owlet would then cross the aisle and be passed forward and complete its journey in the hands of the other grandmother. Now, warming the owlet can take a while. People liked holding that little stone. So while the owlet was being imbued with the love of each guest, the groom and his father read alternating portions of a special poem. Here's how I introduced it. Every dad looks at his baby boy and imagines what he'll be like when he's all grown up and becomes, in the words of the poem, just like me. Knowing both the joys and the struggles that await, the dad doesn't want his son to grow up too fast. That's the sentiment expressed in the poem called Tadpole by Kermit the Frog. Anthony and his father Giorgio will share it with us now. Now, I'm not including the poem here, but you can easily find it online. It's one of the many treasures the late Jim Henson gave the world. If you're thinking about including the poem in a baby blessing, just be sure that those who will read it get to see it in advance. The words are simple. The emotions they evoke are profound. As Anthony and his dad read the poem, they weren't the only ones wiping a tear. Now remember, part 1 of this ritual is warming the owlet. Part 2 of the ritual is called softening the nest. This is where the nest and the moss come into play. So here's what I said for that portion of the ceremony. Not only does baby Anthony have the great good fortune to have the love of his parents, but also the love of 2 more generations. Grandparents and great-grandparents are the people who pass on the stories and traditions that become the family's heritage. New relationships to a family bring new stories and new traditions. That richness is represented by the moss in this nest. I invite baby Anthony's grands to come up and add a bit more moss to soften the nest. Now I called the grandparents and the great-grandmother by name, and I asked them to join me. Each came up, took a bit of the moss from the container, and carefully tucked it into the empty nest. If the grandparents are comfortable with the idea, you might invite each of them to give a blessing or make a wish for the baby. Part 3 of the nest ritual is called the Parents' Promise. I handed Carla and Anthony the stones that my friend Carol had painted with owls to represent the parents, and as they held the stones, I said, "The most important job in the world is being a parent. Carla and Anthony, you have a huge responsibility, not only to baby Anthony, but also to yourselves, your families, your neighborhood, your schools, your community. It's true, as your child grows, so do your responsibilities. You'll teach him how to play peekaboo, how to walk, and how to hold a spoon. You'll teach him numbers and colors and the words dog, cat, bird, bug, and so many more. You'll teach him how to splash in a puddle, build a sandcastle, jump in a pile of leaves, make a snowman, blow out the candles. You'll teach him please and thank you and set rules and boundaries to keep him safe. You'll teach him how to eat an ear of corn, tell time, tie a shoelace, ride a bike, swing a bat, kick a ball, and play a guitar. You'll teach him how to shave. You'll teach him how to dance with a girl. You'll teach him how to think and do for himself so that when the day comes that he leaves the nest, you'll know he can fly on his own. Far more important than any of those skills you'll teach him are these 2 gifts you'll give him, for these 2 gifts will create the foundation of his future. First, give him the security that comes with unconditional love. And second, give him the self-esteem that comes from always seeing his father in love with his mother. Carla and Anthony, please show your acceptance of your new roles by placing the parent owls in the nest and saying a few words about your hopes for your child's future. Now remember that a ritual is a visible act performed with invisible intent. 3 years earlier, I had married this couple. I knew how much they dreamed of having a family. Just as they made vows to each other during their wedding ceremony, each now made a vow to baby Anthony and placed a parent owl in the nest. As part of their wedding ceremony, Carla and Anthony included a hand-fasting ritual with a custom cord I made in their colors. Now, my cords are 9 feet long. Once they tied the marriage knot, there was still plenty of cord for use in future celebrations, like an anniversary celebration or a baby blessing. I made reference to their wedding hand-fasting. Over the years, they had kept the cord in a safe place, and now it sat on the little table next to the nest where the 2 parent owls snuggled in the moss. I had made their cord in shades of moss green satin with Merlot rosebuds. So now I lifted the cord and cupped the marriage knot in my hand and said, "This knot is the visible evidence of the binding of your hearts. Today you make another knot in the cord, this time binding 3 hearts." I handed the cord to Anthony and said, "You've accepted your responsibilities as parents. You have professed your love for your child and your hopes for his future. I now ask you, what name have you given this child?" The new dad, a musician, placed the marriage knot over his son's heart, and together the new parents said, "We name you Anthony." I said, "Anthony means one who loves to sing and can charm people with his music. The name also corresponds energetically to moss green agate. What middle name do you give this child?" And together the parents said, "We give you the middle name of Francesco." I responded, "Francesco means one who is strong, humorous, and a natural peacemaker." "What surname do you give this child?" The new father said, "We give you the name Girardi. May it stand for your heritage." The new mother said, "We give you the name Girardi. May it honor your children as well." While I was asking the questions, the new mom held the baby and the new dad loosely wrapped the satin handfasting cord around the baby. Now the new dad gently slipped the cord off his son and tied a small knot next to the big marriage knot, and he placed the cord on the table. Now keep in mind that all this time, that baby owlet is making its way among the guests. Now it's time for the fourth and final part of the nest ritual. Part 4 is called the family. Here's what I said. Today we have recognized many important relationships between grandparents and grandchildren, mother and child, father and son. We now recognize one more relationship, that between a child and his community, represented by everyone here. The plan was for the second grandmother to come forward with the owlet and place it in the nest. But as often happens in life, things don't always go as planned. It was only now that I noticed that sometime during the ceremony, the grandmother had moved over one chair, giving the aisle seat to a boy about 4 years old. He sat there without squirm or fidget, his hands in his lap fisted together in a tight ball. The grandmother and I exchanged knowing looks. And with a note of reverence, I walked over to the boy and asked, "Does the baby owlet rest with you?" Eyes wide, he nodded. "Then you have the biggest job, the most important honor of the day. You need to bring the owlet to the nest, where its mommy and daddy are waiting. Can you do it?" And again he nodded. He had to wiggle to get off the chair while still clutching the stone, so I offered to hold it for him, and he said, "No, I can do it." And he did. Then slowly, with the solemnity of a processional down the aisle of a cathedral, the little boy walked up to the nest. "Go ahead," I whispered, and ever so gently he placed the owlet in the nest next to its parents. His Aunt Carla beamed down at him, and his Uncle Anthony patted him on the shoulder. That little boy walked back to his seat, easily a foot taller. Well, we're at the end of the ceremony now. We've honored the ancestors. The new father and grandfather read the tadpole. The grandparents and great-grandmother softened the nest. The new parents made vows to their son, tied a new knot in the handfasting cord, and honored his name. The owlet, warmed with the love of everyone present, has been tucked into the soft moss and the safety of the parents. So here's how I close the ceremony. We came today to welcome a child, to recognize a family, to acknowledge our responsibility to the next generation. We have achieved this and more. We are blessed by the spirit of joy here today, the intertwined lives of family and friends, and the love and support for this child and his parents. Baby Anthony, may you be a light for yourself and others. May your heart always point you towards truth. May you become the person you are inside, realizing your own hopes and dreams. May the long-time sun shine upon you. May all love surround you, and may the sweet light within you guide you on your way. Carla held up her son for all to see as I said, "Friends and family, I am honored to present to you Anthony Francesco Girardi, Jr." I hope this baby blessing inspired you to create one of your own. You can, of course, make your own nest and owls, but if you'd like to purchase a nest, moss, and a family of owls for yourself or as a unique gift, please visit my Etsy shop, Moon River Rituals. You'll find a link in the show notes. You can find ritual recipes on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, wherever you consume your podcasts. If you like the taste of this episode, please subscribe. That way you won't miss an episode and you can help others find the show. I'd really appreciate that. Ritual Recipes is a side dish of moonriverrituals.com. That's the mother website, where I've worked since 2012 as a certified life cycle celebrant to officiate more than 100 weddings, bless babies, perform vow renewals, conduct funerals and memorial services, and create seasonal rituals for private circles and public gatherings. For more about these rituals, visit the website moonriverrituals.com. Click on the Ritual Recipes tab. You'll find a drop-down menu with the show notes. This is episode number 3. Rituals keep us oriented to the natural world and can connect us to our ancestors. That's what this baby blessing ritual was all about. If you or someone you know is pregnant or adopting a child, or you have a child but haven't yet gathered friends and family for an official celebration, please consider this ritual. The impact can be just as powerful as that moment in The Lion King. Thanks for listening. I believe in the power of ritual. If you do too, or you just want to know a little more about rituals, please join me for the next episode and share the magic.